Um, I'm Logan Edmonds. I'm a marketing analyst at Love's Travel Stop. Been in Oklahoma City for almost a year now, and kind of have a background in healthcare through school, and kind of got introduced to R and analytics through that. And then now I've started using SQL daily at work and just trying to get more efficient with how I run queries and just general processing with handling data between SQL and R, which is a pretty common occurrence for me and probably for a lot of you. So just kind of a general overview of where I want to go with this. First off, I want to let everyone know exactly what machine learning services is through Microsoft, because if you go to their help pages, they're really good, but there's a lot there, and it's an ongoing, it's a work in progress. So there's a lot there, but it's not necessarily concise. It's a little bit difficult to find your way around there. And then I wanted to go over a little bit about how you can go ahead and install machine learning services, and then and also kind of walk you through what it looks like to actually run a script, a stored procedure in SQL Server that will call R in runtime. And then finally, just why, kind of reasons why we might want to have this set up and what kind of benefits we're going to get from this.
Do you realize I can't see your screen?
Yeah. Oh, no, I don't.
It's the cable's hanging down by your right knee.
Sorry about that. So kind of just to rehash real quick what I just went over. You already know who I am now. And then just kind of wanted to go over the three main things I want to go over is just what exactly machine learning services is from Microsoft, how you can use that, how you can call your R code from within SQL using stored procedures, and then why we might want this kind of workflow. So first off, just what machine learning services the architecture actually is. So Microsoft recently bought, I think in 2015, they bought Revolution Analytics, which is like the open source distribution, or the Microsoft's distribution of R. So when they bought Revolution Analytics, they also have created this, what they call Microsoft R Open, which is, it's basically a mirror of CRAN. So if you're familiar at all with the package repository for R, you'll have a pretty good grasp of Microsoft R Open, but it's basically that repository, and then they've included some new function calls that are designed for faster processing, for parallel processing, and then also just kind of general designed for speed. So that's what, when you see the enhanced distribution of R there, that's really what that means to me. And then also I just want to look at where they talk about how this is fully compatible with all packages, scripts, and applications that work with R. So really what that means is if you have any of your favorite packages in R that you use daily, say ggplot or dplyr or something like that, as long as your versioning is good, which is something you should always keep up with, it will run in SQL Server through a stored procedure. So I know this is a little bit of a spaghetti diagram here, but what this is basically getting at is that your script is executed, your stored procedure is executed in SQL Server, but it's actually launching a process that calls R, the executable from R, in a separate environment, or a separate space, I guess I should say. And so you're getting the advantage of that in-memory processing with SQL Server, but you're not, it's not actually embedded in the SQL Server instance. So kind of what we're looking at here is you have either your R or your Python development environment that you like to use, and you actually run your script and call SQL Server, and that whatever code that you have in either R or Python is actually run in the database, so you're not running into any limitations with in-memory with R, and performs those calculations in the database, and then you can either send your results back to your IDE or write them to the database. So this is kind of a relatively new thing, first introduced with SQL Server 2016. It was branded as R services at the time because it was only for R. And since then, Microsoft's kind of, I think they're really buying into this idea. So they're actually rebranded as machine learning services and now also include Python. So just kind of an idea of what a typical workflow looks like right now, especially this is kind of thing I'm doing right now is have data in SQL Server that you want to look at in RStudio. Typically for me, that means I just want to make some histograms or look at some distributions, that sort of thing. So you can actually go in. What I typically do is install a package that can run through an ODBC connection, run and query the server and pull whatever data I want into RStudio. And then inversely, I can go and actually just save that data or whatever processing I do in R, save that to SQL Server. So I think this is probably fairly common workflow for a lot of people. Did anyone here use ODBC connections to R or anything like that? Okay. Not yet? Okay. So just to give you an idea of what we're looking at here, so say we have this script here that we're going in. Oh, come on. Yeah.
Windows key P and duplicate.
Thank you. Yes, we have a script here, and what this is doing is this is all in R. This is just in RStudio, the IDE for R. And what I'm doing here is first off just going through and installing the necessary packages. And then I have an ODBC connection to the database. So if you go in and look at your ODBC connections right now, I have a connection to my test database that I can go in and configure. So I have that connection set, and then within the script, I'm calling that connection, and then I'm running a query on that connection. In this case, I have a view set up in the AdventureWorks database, kind of the test SQL Server database. So I'm going through and I'm just pulling all the data from a time series data that's in the AdventureWorks database. So I'm going through and doing that, and then I'm going and actually just creating forecasting models for each of the different regions that are represented in the data, actually specifically just Europe. So I'm going through and creating forecast models for each of those specific regions. And then typically what I would do here is I would go in and write this output, or write this, whatever the output is, to SQL Server. So we're kind of back to that, back to this diagram here. So I've read the data in, I've done my processing, done my forecasting in RStudio, or sorry, in R, and then I'm wanting to push that back. And this is really where we get into the advantages of this in database analytics, where we're kind of avoiding this constant push-pull, where if we have code like this that we know is production ready and that's already been tested, and we know we can run it in the database without having any bugs or issues, then what we want to do is we want to go ahead and we wrap this code up, and we go into our query editor for SQL Server and actually wrap all of this code in a stored procedure that calls our runtime and runs this code within SQL Server, and then we can output the results to a table within SQL Server, and this is all just running in database. So we don't have to push the data to SQL Server. So that's all I have on that. Do we have any questions about how this works, or like what kind of applications, or how this might be useful, anything like that? All right. Thanks. Yeah. So I do have. I want to go ahead and, if I can, just embed these slides in the talk on the meetup site. I have some guides and stuff that I put in here for how you can actually go about installing this, because it's kind of it's not a really simple process. There's quite a few steps involved, but how you can go in and create your own sandbox. So there's a talk that Jimmy Ewald with the OKC SQL group gave about creating a sandbox environment. So that's a good way to go ahead and go in and create your sandbox, and then you can, during your installation of that sandbox, you can install machine learning services, so you can play around with that. And then you'll also need to install a few other things. So I'm going to go ahead and include that in the slides when I post them on the site.